Are you sick of these terms like,
Нет, comrade, she is clean as whistle.
this is why we have a dictionary?
Нет, comrade,
Are you sick of these terms like,
rabid Hillary supporters. Нет, comrade, the FBI's like America's shady boyfriend now.
are you sick of these terms?
I think, yeah, he probably did say it, but who cares? Нет, comrade, she is clean as whistle.
Are you sick of these terms like cisgender white male?
Нет, comrade, rabid Hillary supporters. If we don't fix this problem.
Are you sick of these terms like,
Нет, comrade.
are you sick of these terms like
Нет,
cisgender white male?
нет, comrade. They value what they call sex positiveness.
This is why we have a dictionary.
They value what they call rabid Hillary supporters. They value what they call
Cisgender white male.
Niet, comrade. And I hesitate to even use the word
Cisgender white male. Are you sick of these terms?
Niet, comrade.
Anti-Semitism is wrong, but
Niet, comrade.
anti-Semitism is
Cisgender white male.
but
Polish holes, Polish hole. I work for Polish hole. I'm proud to be a hole.
Guten Tag.
Indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, but your mic's actually a little low.
Yeah, I don't know why it records low.
Actually, never mind. That's a failure on my microphone.
Oh.
My headset. I'm sorry.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah, I've got the like mic boost on Windows up as high as it'll go. But when I was doing a podcast with the Borum Forum the other day, he said the same thing, that it records really low.
I think you probably want to avoid the mic boost thing, but I don't know. Your settings work for you.
Yeah, kind of. Like when I separate my audio from video, I'll do a noise reduction and then normalize and compress. And when I do all that stuff, then it's, normal volume and all good.
Does it say we're live now? That says we're live.
Yeah, that's what I didn't think that you could
We
access
are most definitely live now.
Yes. So, yeah. Anyway, but it's still got 10 minutes to go. So if you want to, go to the little boys' potty room or something, that's cool.
Yes, that was my plan, to go to the little boys' potty room.
Yeah. That's what we called it in the Army. So.
Oh, is that what you called in the Army? That's very. You guys shoot guns there. You could come up with a more adult term.
Yeah. All right. Give me 1 second. I'm going to grab something to drink and see if I can cut out some background noise.
Yes, sir.
All right. Just a second.
Hello, chat. I don't think he realizes that we are now live. He forgot to hit the button. Has any of you 4 people checked in? Now go easy on the poor guy, because I don't think he realizes this is like his first time with Hangouts. And in fairness, it's a bit of a mystery to me too. And I'm the absolute worst person to coach him through this. And so I told him, share the Hangouts link with me, but I didn't think he would put it live when he did. I thought you would just keep it offline. What is up, homies?
All right. So have you been entertaining our audience while I was gone?
Yes, I was hoping you would realize that your audience knows that you're live and it wasn't supposed to be.
Well, better early than late. That's what I always say.
That is a good philosophy.
Say what?
That is a good philosophy to have.
Well, I've found that all of my philosophies are good to have. You can borrow them if you like.
We'll see. I'll decide which ones are good, and I'll adopt the good ones.
All right. Well, it's an awesome honor to finally get to talk to you, man.
Oh, yeah. So this is the issue that can't escape me, because the first time I talked about this was in a video essay after the Vegas massacre. And then I did a debate on Don from Two Plebs Talk News channel about this issue, which, by the way, everybody who is watching, go subscribe to that. It's a great channel. Very laid back stuff. Then I did another one with Sinatra Says. So in all, I feel like you have me at advantage because you basically got every one of my arguments that you could review. And I don't think I've seen a single thing about yours that I could find where you stand.
Okay. Well,
I'm going in the dark on this one.
I haven't actually published an argument, well, not in video form, at least, about my views on gun control. I did write an article about it. It's on my blog, but that was I don't know, a couple of years ago.
Is it Cast Off Chains or is it another blog?
Cast Off Chains, yeah.
Okay.
But I haven't read it in a couple of years since I wrote it, and it may very well be that my ideas on certain things have changed. So
I would hope so.
yeah, but you're right. I do have you at somewhat of a disadvantage. I've watched all 3 of those videos you mentioned, and to be honest, I don't subscribe to Sinatra Says. And when I listened or when I watched the video of your debate, even I was frustrated just at the manner in which he was debating. It seemed slightly disingenuous.
We're talking Sinatra Says here?
Yes, yeah.
What was disingenuous about it?
Well, like for instance,
Like my manner or his?
no, his. For instance,
Oh, okay.
when you said it's harder to get a gun in Europe than it is in America, that's plainly
Yes.
obvious. I mean, there's you can't argue that. And he said, well, not really.
It depends where you are. Yeah, it's like, no, it really doesn't depend where you are. But
No,
I mean, for
no,
the
not
purpose
really.
of that conversation, it was in Germany. Like that's what we were talking about. So I don't know
Yeah.
what was up for debate about that.
I don't know, but just things like that. Like, it's very frustrating when you're debating with someone and they try to block you at every little point. Like, just give me a little leeway to make my point, and then you can argue that.
Oh, that's what makes the true ideologues the hardest to talk to. Like, because if your entire position is, no gun control whatsoever, then you're unmovable. Like, right? If this is your philosophy going in, there's no resolution to be had, and my goal is to sway you.
Right.
So, if I
exactly.
may,
It's the yeah. Go ahead.
there are 2 philosophies here. One of these philosophies is that everyone should be armed anytime they want, and one of these philosophies is that nobody should be armed at all. One of these philosophies makes us undoubtedly freer, and one of these philosophies makes us undoubtedly safer. I think
Okay.
our goal
Right,
is to find a
yes.
resolution between the 2. Like, we want to be free and safe at the same time, but we can't have an absolute of both. So we have to figure out where that line is.
Yeah, I agree.
So what were we saying?
See, we're agreeing already.
Yeah. All right. The end of the debate. I am the victor.
Well, that was fun. Less than an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously extremes are nowhere to begin. I think you said that when you were talking to Don from Two Plebs, the very beginning of your debate. And I don't. I think, like, in fact, when I was talking on my political compass test, my most recent video, I was talking about anarchy, which is one of those extreme ideas. It's just foolish, but the opposite extreme is equally foolish.
Yeah. Yeah. What makes those political compass tests a little bit annoying is there's no room for nuance, and you always want to introduce nuance. Like, they're giving you a dichotomy, and it's like, well, I tend to agree with this, but there are these situations where this is also acceptable. Like when it comes to gun control, like I tend to agree that you should be allowed to have guns for the purposes of self-defense. I just disagree about what those kinds of guns should be, and that's ultimately what we're going to disagree on.
Yeah, and that brings me to what I find most interesting about your argument. It's one thing to argue against someone who essentially wants, whether they admit it or not, wants to ban all guns, which is foolish and it's impossible. But it's easy to argue against a foolish, impossible argument. But for you own guns and you own them for the purpose of self-defense, and I'm sure sport shooting and maybe hunting as well. Which obviously I agree with. However, you, at least when I was listening to your other debates, you want to, or you think it's a good idea to ban assault rifles like AR-15s.
Yes.
Okay, so can you want to go into that a little bit?
Okay, so this is the philosophy. An AR-15 is different from, and I know this is where you're going to get stuck on definitions here, but an AR-15 is a different kind of gun than any other kind of a hunting rifle. This is a weapon of war. The only real difference between the Armalite rifle, the civilian AR-15, and the military M16 is the ability to be fully automatic. So I don't believe that this is a weapon that should be in civilian hands. I think this is clearly designed as a weapon of war.
Okay, well, I don't want to get into semantics, but just to clarify, um, you'll rarely see an M16 in the military. What you have is the Colt M4, which doesn't fire fully automatic. It's safe, semi-auto, and 3-round burst.
Okay.
So, but of course, there are heavier weapons like the 240 Bravo or the SAW that fire, they're belt fed, fire fully automatic.
Light machine guns.
Yes, yeah. And the reason that they don't do full auto on the M4 is because it just wastes ammo. There's really no point. There's no effective. Oh, we have heavier guns for that just to suppress the enemy. But
you were in the army, right?
yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the military, you were trained to prefer semi-automatic as a means of being more accurate, lethal, and conserving ammo. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. And that's why we have 3-round burst instead of fully automatic fire now, because we have separate. We have people whose job it is to lay down heavy suppressing fire, but that's not the job of your boots on the ground infantrymen with the M4.
You want to be as accurate as possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then, functionally, what is the difference between the M4A1 and the AR-15?
3-round burst. That's really the only difference.
Okay. So then, wouldn't you consider the AR-15 to equally be a weapon of war, if that is the only difference?
I agree. It is a weapon of war. However, I don't necessarily make the same distinction that you do. I think that all weapons are weapons of war, and I think that is the reason that we should have them.
To some degree, well, you're going to say this. The reason we should have them is so that we can put a check on a tyrannical government at home. Is this correct?
You need to stop reading my mind. That's terrifying.
I've done this for a while. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the check on a tyrannical government at home is a democratic system. We can vote in this country. Now, if you want to claim a right to self-defense with a gun, I agree that you have a natural right to self-defense. I even agree that you should have a right to a gun as a means to that self-defense. But when it comes to overthrowing the government, it's a little bit scary to think about what your idea of tyranny is and how that will differ from mine, and how if we just let people be armed, we're just going to keep trading government for government because everybody has this different idea of what an oppressive government is. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, that's true. I agree. There are some extremists who think that we are living under an oppressive regime right now, simply because the person who was elected president is Donald Trump.
Yeah,
but
they're crazy.
There are equally extreme people that felt the same way when Obama was president, and I disagree with both sides.
Yeah. So functionally, we have, as a matter of utility, we have a pretty good government by and large. It is full of checks and balances every which way. Even within the federal government itself, it's full of checks and balances. So
yeah, I agree. But
I see guns as the last safeguard against tyranny, not the first.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, we have the right to redress the government for grievances. I mean, that obviously is. I would use that before arming myself, I think, and marching on Washington.
All right, well, that's actually a perfect example, though. Okay. Wouldn't it be frightening if people said, if they wanted to redress the government for their grievances, they said, we cast a vote. That is us redressing the government for our grievances. We made it clear to the government what our grievances was, and they went ahead with Donald Trump instead of Hillary Clinton. So we're going to march on to Washington with our AR-15s.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, yeah, you're right. I'm sure there are some people, a very, very small minority, who would do that. And they're probably in some militia somewhere. But
yeah,
you would need, well, obviously you would need pretty much the entire American population to do that, because if someone actually does that, the military is going to have to get involved. So now you've got the American populace versus the military. However, the thing is, and you made a good point in that we do have a good government. We have the best system of government in the entire world. Not that the practical effectiveness of it
among the best, but yeah,
right. But as far as the foundation of our
conversation for another time.
Okay, very well. However, if you look at the German government, prior to World War II, the Weimar Republic, it was basically a pretty good system. And then they voted in supreme powers, just like you saw in Star Wars, and you had the same result.
Well, except you didn't. I mean, yeah, they voted in. Adolf Hitler was elected democratically. But this idea that if only there were guns in the time of Hitler, we could have stopped his rise to power and his oppressive regime. The body politic was not against Adolf Hitler. He was a very popular person in
Yes.
Germany. He actually loosened gun laws when he had power. So it doesn't. Even historically, it's not exactly a shining beacon of checks against tyranny. That most times if conflicts are resolved with blood, it's blood between nations, not blood internally.
Yes, that's true. And most of what you say is true, but correct me if I'm wrong here, but did he not severely restrict like all of the rights of the Jewish people, including their right to have firearms?
Yes.
Okay. So my point basically is that even a good system can become tyrannical.
Yes, absolutely.
Against its own people. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I concede this point. It's a safeguard against tyranny. That's fine. That's not really something to argue against, though. But I don't think guns being a safeguard against tyranny necessarily means that we have to throw common sense out of the window with it. Like we still don't want crazy people having guns, right? There has to be some limitation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. If I was forced into a position where I had to fight in a civil war, I wouldn't want a crazy person next to me.
I wouldn't want to get shot by a crazy person in general.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so let's figure out where this line is then. My line is at the AR-15. Your line is we're never going to get anywhere if we start on that spot. So, and in principle, you're okay with background checks.
Yes. I mean,
in principle.
Sorry, if you were going to limit a person's ability to own a firearm, to say, hey, if you do this thing, you have now forfeit your right. We didn't take it from you. You gave it up because of your actions. Then you have to be able to enforce that rule. And the only way to do that is by doing a background check. But the only way that works is if people are reported. Like if someone commits a felony, it has to be reported and put into the system in order for it to come up in a background check. And that system is lax.
Yes, unfortunately. But you wouldn't just throw the system out because it's lax. You would just improve the system. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, you're like way more reasonable than I was expecting. I was hoping some like jabs back and forth, but man,
we'll get there.
You're gonna cede all my points to me. Okay, then in principle, do you also agree with waiting periods?
I think they're silly. I don't necessarily have a problem with them. Like I understand the principle. Like if you're enraged and you're like, I don't know, it just seems dumb. Like I can't see the logic behind a person being, well, it's gonna sound kind of ridiculous, but like a person is enraged for whatever reason, jealousy or whatever reason, and they suddenly go to a gun store. I don't see that happening. I can see going to a friend saying, hey, give me your gun, or just like flying over to the person's house at whom they're enraged and doing something terrible. But going to a gun store and filling a background check and doing all that, I don't see that. Well, if it did happen,
guns are
yeah, if it did happen that way, then yeah, I think it's a good idea to make someone wait a cooldown period.
Well, that's the idea behind them, that there are impulsive acts of violence, that people fight and somebody wants to kill somebody else or they want to kill themselves. So they very impulsively and rapidly go and do something to get a tool to this end, and that waiting periods are ultimately going to stop them from doing it. That they're ultimately going to be a deterrence because you're going to have time to cool down, and you have time to think, time to patch things up, whatever. It is measurably good at reducing instances of suicide and even homicide.
Okay, what is the measure?
Yeah. Okay, hang on. Let me find the measure for you, and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Okay. Waiting periods save lives. Basically, when a background check is not completed after 3 days, federal law allows dealers to deliver a gun to purchase. Yada yada yada. I have this written down. Waiting periods can also, because I compile my research beforehand. I'm nerdy like that. Waiting periods can can also reduce instances of suicide and impulsive acts of violence. According to the American Journal of Public Health, states with waiting period laws experience 51% fewer firearm suicides than states without such laws. Further, a study by the National Academy of Sciences have found that firearm waiting laws reduce gun homicides by 17%, or 750 homicides per year. If this policy were federal and universal, it would likely prevent another 910 gun homicides per year, making for 1,600 total lives saved.
Okay.
So my source for this is American Journal for Public Health and the National Academy of Sciences. I'll send you the links right now.
Right. Okay. I think the suicide prevention is sort of like, I don't know why even bother, because if I want to kill myself and I can't do it with a gun, I'll just find another way. No big deal. And I know.
Yeah, but the other way is harder, isn't it?
Not necessarily.
Like if you have to swallow. Well, if it is, if it's not as immediate and you try to kill yourself, you have time to change your mind.
I've heard you argue that before, and yes, in some cases, obviously that's true. I think it's probably easier to go to the top of a very tall building and jump off than it is to get a gun, get ammunition, and all that. But to your point, it's even more difficult if you have to wait, a few days to get that weapon. And honestly, I think it's like here in the state where I live, there is no waiting period. But I wouldn't really bother me that much if there were. Like it's a minor annoyance, I think, at best.
Yeah. You wouldn't concede that it's a minor annoyance that could possibly save lives, though?
Well, I mean, obviously, like you said, I'd have to look at the actual information, but I'll just assume that it's accurate enough. And yeah, it doesn't surprise me that it would save some lives. But I mean, if you follow that logical progression, there are a lot of things that would save lives that aren't infringements on protected rights of people.
So what are you talking about? What would save lives?
I'm sorry?
What could save lives that's not an infringement on a protected item?
Like, for instance, and it's an exaggeration, of course, but like banning vehicles, that would save a lot of lives.
What?
That sort of thinking.
Yes. So then the conundrum is, what kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a really free world, or do you want to live in a really safe world? And I think everybody wants, like I said, everybody wants a balance of the two. They want the freedom to travel, but they also want the safety that comes with the seatbelt, if that makes sense.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I think a better analogy might be the freedom to travel comes with a speed limit.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, because the whole seatbelt thing is a pet peeve of mine.
You're giving me my own arguments.
Well, and you're right. I'm not gonna make up some, facetious or ridiculous defense against a valid argument just to fight you on something.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's pointless, and it's just a waste of your time and mine. However, it's, I'm sure you've heard this before. One of these things is a right that's protected by the Constitution, and the other is not. And when it comes to the kind of world that you want to live in, whether it's whether it leans toward the safety side or leans toward the freedom side, I want the freest world that we can possibly have, and I will deal with my own safety, my own protection.
I see. Well, you mentioned that you think it's no, it is protected by the Constitution. But do you think that means that everything is protected by the Constitution? That every kind of arm you could have is protected by the Constitution? Or do you think there's limits to the Constitution?
I think there's a reason that in the Second Amendment they use the wording "shall not be infringed," whereas
they also use a well-regulated militia in the Second Amendment too.
Yes, they did. Yeah, and here's the thing that, and this is an interesting thing. I don't want to digress too much, but when, like I mentioned before, I have watched the videos of your previous debates, and what surprised me more than anything was, of all of the things that you discussed, I never heard the Constitution or the Second Amendment mentioned. Maybe I missed something, like a couple of the debates were
Yes, that was very intentional. In my debate with both Don and Sinatra says, I tend to want to stay away from constitutional arguments because our entire interpretation of well-regulated militia, or our entire interpretation of right of the people, is going to come down to something like the Federalist Papers, And
Mhm.
even then, we're never going to agree on a definition or even how relevant the Federalist Papers are to this. I mean, I can argue the Constitution if you want to argue the Constitution, but that's a quagmire.
I understand what you're saying, and yeah, I don't want to argue down to a agree to disagree kind of a point. Which, if we do, that's fine. That's better than becoming angry or something. But
Yes.
I don't think that you can really have an argument about legislating something without bringing up the foundation of our laws. Do you?
Okay, but then you can bring up the foundation of our law. I agree. The foundation of our laws is relevant, and if we're talking about legislation, we should pass legislation that is constitutional. That being said, I think I have case law on my side that says that things like assault weapons are not constitutional.
I suppose that depends on which case or how
Well,
far
we
back
can
you want to go.
we can take the most popular case that gun rights advocates use, which is the DC versus Heller decision, where Scalia writes that an individual does possess a right to keep and bear arms outside of militia service, but that freedom does not necessarily apply to weapons that are dangerous and unusual. So we have a new constitutional test for figuring out what weapons are allowed, and it's dangerous and unusual. Now, from there, you can interpret what you want. But there's another case, a Maryland case, where the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals determines that dangerous and unusual does not apply to weapons that are like the M16, which was also singled out in Scalia's opinion. Now, I think an AR-15 is like the M16, given that it is the M16's grandfather.
Yes, but also very unlike because it doesn't have full automatic fire.
Yes. I think the
Right.
Maryland, I think the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals saw that as a distinction without a difference. I will provide you the opinion if you like.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. But also, that's kind of irrelevant anyway, because obviously, fully automatic weapons are already highly regulated in the United States.
Yes. Yes, but semi-automatics can be regulated. Every weapon is regulated in the United States.
Yes,
there
but,
are limitations to handguns. The question is, can an AR-15 be outright banned? And yes, the answer is yes. Constitutionally, it can.
I disagree.
Okay. What is your disagreement on?
Well, I disagree that constitutionally, in fact, I don't even think that constitutionally a fully automatic weapon should be banned.
Okay, now why do you say this?
Because it's pretty clear in the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. And if you make the argument that, well, that only applies to a militia, the thing is, the Supreme Court is tasked with the job of interpreting the Constitution.
Yes.
Okay? Now, that interpretation changes because the justices change.
Yes.
Naturally. And the whole argument about the Constitution is a living document that's, open to interpretation. Obviously, it is open to interpretation. However, it was written in one specific time period. And that time period, the language and the meaning of that language from that time period hasn't changed. The English language obviously has changed, but the meanings of the words from that time hasn't changed. So the way to really interpret is like when you're reading the Bible, the King James Bible, and you get a concordance because it was written originally in Aramaic or Hebrew, and you want to get the definition of the specific word in the original language. So why wouldn't you go back to find out what the original writers, the authors of the Constitution meant when they wrote those words? Doesn't that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense, but I can answer that question.
Okay.
The reason you don't want to go back to them is because you'll find different founders voting for different things for different reasons. That even the founders didn't have a universal agreement on what certain phrases meant.
No, of course not. No, of course not. But look at James Madison, who actually wrote the Bill of Rights. He's the one that actually wrote the Second Amendment, and his original wording. Hang on a second. His original wording was, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, comma, a well-armed and well-regulated militia being the best security of a free country, semicolon, but no person religiously scrupulous of bearing arms shall be compelled to render military service in person." So it seems like when you read it originally, it was the right came first, and then the militia came second. And they also considered the militia to be every military-aged male. However,
that's interesting because I have a completely different interpretation of what you just read.
Okay. Let me finish my point, if you will.
Sure.
The reason that I make a distinction between the militia part and the right of the people part is militia was considered to be every military-aged male at the time, and if you interpret, if you look at it strictly as a militia, then you can say, well, obviously, women have no right to keep and bear arms, which we know is ridiculous. So it's the right of all people for the basically so we can have a well-armed and well-regulated militia.
Well, here's where I'm confused.
Okay.
You say the meaning of it doesn't change, right? You said it changes based on our interpretation of it over time, but what the founders meant doesn't change. That was your words earlier? Okay. If they said the militia is military-aged male, that should automatically imply that women aren't qualified to keep and bear arms, that right doesn't extend to them, right?
Well, no. And I'm not trying to be a pain, but no. It means that women don't qualify to be in the militia, but the right of the people is all of the people.
Who says the people are all of the people?
Well, if you look at like everywhere in the Constitution where it says the people, it's all of the people, not just men.
Well, this is the thing. I do look at other parts of the Constitution. And I see parts like Article 1, Section 8, where Congress is tasked with arming, disciplining, and training the militia. So it makes me think that Congress decides who the people are in connection with a militia.
That seems like a leap to me.
I mean, it's Article 1, Section 8. I don't know what to say. It says it there. It is the same militia in Article 1, Section 8 that is referenced in the Second Amendment, isn't it?
Right.
Okay. This is why arguing on the Constitution itself is so hard. I think you're of the right of the people. I don't think any right you have is unlimited. And I gave this example, and I'm sure you heard it, that the right to free speech doesn't mean I can yell fire in a crowded theater. So it must similarly apply to any other enumerated right. That's my philosophy.
I'm sorry, whatever you said before every enumerated right, you kind of cut out there.
Okay. The First Amendment does not protect your rights to free speech are not protected when it comes to yelling fire in a crowded theater. So my philosophy is that your rights are limited just in that every other enumerated right must similarly be limited like the first is.
Okay. To that point, like I said in my political compass video, rights being, freedom, of course, freedom has to be limited because in order for everyone to have the most freedom that we can have, there has to be limitations. The law is a limitation in and of itself on our liberty.
Absolutely.
So, yes, I'm not one of those people that's like, no, you cannot limit the rights of the people ever for any reason. Obviously, there have to be.
So where's the line, do you?
The line,
like you said I'm sorry, fully automatics. A ban on fully automatics was unconstitutional in your eyes. Why do you say that specifically if you already accept the premise that the rights can be limited?
Because the way that I interpret it, at least, is the reason that we have the right to keep and bear arms is first and foremost in case we have to overthrow a tyrannical government. Now, I'm not one of those people that thinks it's going to happen tomorrow, or it may never happen. I mean, we have
just call it an insurance policy.
Right, there you go, insurance policy. But also to defend yourself and your family and your property. And if we do have the right to self-defense and the right to overthrow a tyrannical government, then why should we be limited in the effectiveness of that right?
Because your right to some of these weapons could infringe upon my right to life.
How so?
You use them on me.
Okay, well, that applies to every weapon then.
It certainly does apply to every weapon, but so we have to balance my right to safety with your right to keep and bear arms. And now we figure out how safe. I don't have a right. There's not a societal right to safety.
Maybe an implied societal right, but not a negative right.
I'm sorry. Safety's not a negative right.
It's not a constitutionally protected right. What I'm saying is safety is actually trying to figure out a way.
It says so in the very preamble of the Constitution. It establishes that the government is created to provide for the common defense.
Yes,
that should imply a safety, a societal safety.
It seems like it seems like you're conflating the two to me, because safety is something that you provide for yourself. It's not something the government provides for you. Just like my right to keep and bear arms is protected by the Constitution, but I have to buy my own guns. I have to buy my own
Okay.
ammunition.
What is the difference between safety and defense then? I mean, when I shoot somebody who's invading my home, I'm not committing self-safety. It's self-defense, right?
Yes, it's self-defense in the
But
interest of your own safety.
Okay, so then I do have safety.
Yes, but not provided for you. Like, we have a police force and a military that it is the government's job to provide. Now,
Yeah.
that is one of the few things that in the Constitution the government is tasked with. However, when it comes down to it, I would rather protect myself and then call the police and say, hey, this is what happened, rather than waiting for them to show up to protect me. Because
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. The issue is being on equal footing, though. Part of providing for if I have a handgun to defend myself, but you have a fucking tank, I'm outgunned. Like the common defense is not being provided for in this sense. There is no self-defense to ensure my own safety in that kind of a situation. So there has to be some sort of a reasonable limitation that we can apply to each other as a means of ensuring equal footing for defense.
We have that limitation. It's
Yes.
the law.
Yes.
Right. So I'm not allowed to bring my tank to your house and blow you to smithereens, and you're not allowed to bring your pistol to my house and shoot me.
Yes, but I can't trust you with that tank.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you can trust me or not.
Well, then, okay, if it doesn't matter, we don't need background checks.
That's different. Because not every single person is eliminated by a background check. There are certain people who forfeit their rights and are therefore eliminated by a background check.
Okay. They forfeit their rights by being criminals?
Yes, or, I mean, insane. I mean, that's not someone it's not someone who forfeits their rights by their own actions. It's just, as a society, we agree that those people are not capable of being responsible.
Hang on. Why do we agree to that? Why does society agree to that? What interest does society have in stopping these individuals from getting guns?
Obviously, because they can't be expected to behave in a reasonable way. Like,
and okay, what business is that of ours?
I'm sorry?
What business is that of ours?
It's the business of every individual. Like,
okay.
Like, make your further point.
Okay, my further point is, if you're saying society has an interest in stopping crazy people from getting guns, then we have a societal expectation of safety. That there are certain people we can't trust with guns.
Okay. Yes, we have a societal expectation of safety. Like, if you and I meet each other on the street, I expect you to behave with decency like a normal human being.
Yes.
Right? That's why you and I are allowed to freely walk down the street. Because we legislate for the exception.
Yes.
Right. So people with severe mental illness or people who are mentally deficient are the exception. And, it's unfortunate that a person is born into a situation where they don't have all of the rights that everyone else has, but it's unavoidable. In order to ensure domestic tranquility, you have to have that established.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I take your point. I just disagree. I mean, this is one of these things where we're never going to get anywhere.
Okay.
Like, I think there is a societal right to safety, and I think part of the social contract means that we can impose on you limitations on what your rights are in exchange for something else. And in this case, it's an exchange for safety. Like, you can have a right to a gun for self-defense, but we can't trust you with greater guns that can inflict mass carnage. And that is fundamentally the difference between something like a pistol that can be used for self-defense and an assault rifle that can be used for mass slaughter. I mean, yeah, they can both be used for mass slaughter, but the AR-15 is the go-to weapon for mass slaughter for a reason.
I don't know. I don't think that it is the go-to weapon. Obviously, it seems like it is because the most recent mass shooting was performed with an AR-15. However, I mean, if you want to take every mass shooting that's ever happened, I mean, no, the AR-15 is definitely not going to be even close to the predominant weapon of choice. But it doesn't matter. I don't really think it matters. I don't think it matters if someone comes in with an AR-15 or if someone comes in with, dual wielding pistols and 20 some odd magazines.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters. So I don't think it matters if he comes in with a fully automatic Tommy gun. I don't think
Well,
that means that we should.
hypothetically, if you're, let's say you are the school security guard and all you have is a pistol, what would you rather the school shooter be armed with if it ever comes to that?
Well, look at what happened in Texas with the Mohammed drawing contest.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean the guys showed up and I'm sorry.
The Garland, Texas shooting. Yes, I'm familiar with it.
Texas shooting. I mean, what were those two guys armed with?
I don't know what they were armed with. I know the security was armed with a pistol, but I'm not sure what those two were armed with.
Right, armed with a pistol. And I could be wrong on this, and I'm going to feel like an idiot if I am, but I believe they were armed with AK-47s. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But in that case, I mean, it's a good example.
Yes.
But again, that leads to the argument of training versus untrained and things like that. And you posted that thing on Twitter earlier, where that person posted something.
Oh God, yeah.
DeviantArt.
That really idiotic thing.
Yeah, it's just why don't you
presented without comment,
and garrote them instead of using a gun? I mean, come on, really?
It's a stupid argument. There's a reason I'm laughing at that guy. Yeah. Leftists have bad arguments on this, but what I'm trying to say, there are weapons that are superior to other weapons, and when it comes to, you can use a gun for self-defense against somebody with a machine gun, but if you're in that situation, you would use a chair if you had to. The idea is that certain guns make it harder to defend yourself, though. And AR-15s are very effective at their long range. They're easier to handle, right? The pistols don't have the range that an AR-15 has. So if I am the school security officer and I'm armed with nothing but a Glock, I would hope that any would-be school shooter is armed with less than what I have.
Well, yeah, we'd hope. You would hope, but and you would hope there was only one. If you don't have any backup.
Yes,
but that's not always the case. I think. I mean, I don't know. It kind of seems like you're arguing my point that you should have the most effective means.
Oh, hey, if you want to give police officers and security guards AR-15s, I won't stop you.
Well, police officers already have them. AR-15.
I won't stop them. Okay, so it seems like Google Hangouts has this weird lag going on right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I was trying to check on the chat, and I ended up doubling up on our audio.
Oh, okay. That's weird. Yeah, there's nobody in chat.
All right, hang on a second. Let me. Like I said, I'm very new to this. Oh, okay. Well, there's.
Okay. Would you agree with the proposition that you can mow your lawn with an item other than a lawnmower? Like you theoretically, you could take scissors and you could trim each grass blade individually, right?
Yes.
Similarly, you could just, I don't know, you could just salt your dirt or something to keep it down. But you could do other things that aren't just using a lawnmower, but you would use a lawnmower because it's the most logical tool to that purpose, right?
Most effective, yes.
Now, I understand that guns are a tool for self-defense. And people are responsible for using them. People are responsible for their own actions. There is a phrase that guns don't kill people, people kill people. This has the logical consistency of a claim like lawnmowers don't mow lawns, but people mow lawns. An AR-15 is designed expressly for killing people.
See, I disagree on that point. And I've heard you make it. And every time I've watched a video of yours and I've heard that, I can't help but disagree. And it may seem like a semantic argument, but I think the express purpose of an AR-15 or any gun is defense. It's a tool meant for defense.
Okay. It is semantic. Is there any tool meant for killing then? I'm sorry, I should say assault because it's all killing. Is there any tool meant for assault?
Again, I think every gun is meant for assault.
So they serve dual purposes?
Yeah. I mean, just take a military scenario. If you know that bad guys are in this building and you have to assault that objective, I mean, you're bringing the same weapon that you have if the military attacks you. I'm not the military. If the bad guys attack you and you have to defend yourself, it's the same weapon. It's the same tools.
Sure. It can have it can have multiple uses. I'm not disagreeing that it can have multiple uses, but I think its primary use is not self-defense.
I think it's, I don't know. It seems like you said, I think it seems like semantics. If you say this tool's primary purpose is for killing people, that seems like hyperbole to me.
Well, I said its primary purpose was assault.
Okay, same thing. I mean, assault has that very aggressive, very angry sound to it. That's why they call it an assault weapon, is because it, it has the effect on the human mind that they want it to have. If you called it a party weapon, people would feel differently about it, maybe.
I think if you called it a party weapon, people would call it a misnomer.
I don't know.
What are you going to say about the shooter who kills 17 people at a school? He used a party weapon? No, he assaulted them. He used a weapon designed to kill them.
Okay, why not call it a murder weapon then?
That's an idea. You want to go for that?
What was that?
That's an idea. Do you want to go for that?
Well, I mean, we already have that phrase. A weapon used in a murder is a murder weapon.
That is true. This is a little bit like, this was the it's a made-up term argument. Assault weapon is defined very explicitly in the 1994 assault weapon ban. So it's not like the AR-15 is a weapon that is being called assault just to inspire fear in people. It has a legal definition.
Yes. I mean, okay, to say that it's some made-up term, well, I understand your point that it's actually like legally defined, but it was also a made-up term for that assault weapon ban, right?
Okay.
But personally, I like it. I like calling it an assault weapon. It sounds really like fucking badass,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it is. It probably is badass.
It is.
The best way you can convert most liberals on the against gun control is just give them a rifle and have them shoot. It's pretty fun.
Except for that one guy.
If
you ever saw that article the
Which
guy
one
wrote
guy?
about how he's...
Oh, what a pussy.
The guy, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
The recoil, I don't know, made him pee his pants or something.
I will fully credit Don from Two Plebs for this argument because he's the one who gave it to me. But if you want to go down that road, every term is a made-up term.
No, I agree. Yeah, I don't want to go down.
We make up terms to distinguish things that are different from other things. Okay, you don't want to go down that road. Let's not go down that road. I mean, all right.
Go ahead.
So then we're not going to agree on assault weapons. But being that fully automatic weapons are currently banned, how do you feel about bump stocks?
I don't care. I don't care if, if the government banned bump stocks, or if states decided to ban them in a particular state, it doesn't bother me. I've never actually used one. To me, they seem like a novelty, like a 100-round drum magazine. They don't work very well. They're ineffective, and they're just mostly just novelty junk. And that's what
funny. I
everybody,
heard that. Like that.
That's what everybody considered them to be before they gained so much notoriety after the Vegas shooting.
Well, I mean, yeah. That's why they gained notoriety. They were used as an effective means of killing some 58 people. Like it was novelty until it wasn't. It was novelty until it became very effective at killing lots of people.
The reason that it was novelty, though, just like the 100-round drum magazine, is because it's really hard to make it effective. Whoever I can't bring up the guy's name.
Stephen Paddock.
Yes. Yeah, Stephen Paddock. He obviously spent quite a lot of time practicing with the bump stock because it's actually really difficult. Like I said, I've never used one, but from what I've heard from everybody, it's really difficult to make it fire in the same way that a fully automatic weapon fires. And even then, like at its best, it's not quite the same. But anyway, yeah, I as far as banning that, I really couldn't care less, except that I think we should be very hesitant to ban anything.
Okay.
Because I'm not saying that nothing should be banned. That's not what I'm saying. But when you ban something, you create a black market for it, and people are going to get it anyway if they want to. And if you don't plan on going around the country and confiscating all of these things you just banned, then really you're not doing much anyway, except restricting the future sale and production of these items.
Well, I mean, that is a fair goal. I mean, that's what the 94 assault weapon ban did. It actually dropped the number of homicides by use of assault weapons. Like, stopping production for them did create a black market for them. It also like increased the price for them because they're not being supplied anymore. The demand for them, if it goes up, so does the price, right?
Yeah, that's I think the biggest thing that it did do was increase the price. Like when Obama was president and Dianne
Good
Feinstein was,
times.
I'm sorry,
Good times.
and Dianne Feinstein was talking about or trying to get further gun control legislation put in place. The price of a Magpul PMag, a 30 round PMag, went up to like $99 as opposed to like $11. It was ridiculous.
Just the prospects of a ban got you guys scared.
Yeah, I mean, did you? I don't know if you. I guess you didn't notice, but yeah, the number of people who were buying 30 round magazines and AR-15s like shot way up, and there were all kinds of memes about how President Obama and Dianne Feinstein were like,
They're
guns
the best thing to happen to the gun
year.
industry. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a funny thing about the American consumer. Like, if Toyota produces a car that has a bad gas pedal that gets caught under the carpet and it kills a family, Toyota sales drop. If Bluebell produces Listeria lace ice cream, Bluebell sales drop. But for some reason, every time there's a mass shooting where some dude was using an AR-15 to kill 20 some odd people, those sales go through the roof. Like we know it gets the job done, so now we love it, and we're afraid it's going to be taken away, so we all want it. It's a weird thing about this gun. I mean, you admit it's a vice. At least guns are a culture unto themselves. I fine if it is, but let's not pretend like there's some. Well, I guess we can. We can pretend there's some higher, supreme constitutional, protect my family, protect my country feeling to them. But really, it's a culture. You like it, and so you want it.
Yes, I don't disagree with that. We definitely have a gun culture in the United States. And I think I'm sure there are a multitude of reasons for this, but I think one reason is that the United States of America is simply different. Our American culture is simply different than any other country, even very different from the country that gave birth to America, in a sense.
Oh yeah, bunch of
I
tea
think
drinking
one of the
pansies.
reasons for that is because Americans have never been ruled, ever, and the people the people from European countries who disagreed with the idea of being ruled came to America. So in a sense, the idea of self-determination is in our bloodline. It's in our genetics.
Yeah.
Americans.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're so resistant to the idea of guns being taken away, or limitations being placed on our ability and our right to defend ourselves.
Yeah, I take your point.
Okay, so let's talk about the idea of banning a 30 round magazine.
Yes.
Okay, now you're for that, right?
Yeah, I think I don't think that 30 rounds necessarily is a tool for self-defense. Like I think police officers use 15 round magazines. I think that's a fair number. I think if you have to go over that, either you're not defending yourself or you're bad at defending yourself, in which case you probably shouldn't have a gun in the first place.
Or you should have more than one.
Or that, hey, you want to have all the 15 round magazines you want, knock yourself out.
So why does it make a difference to you, whether it's 10 or 15 or 30 or 7 or 9 or whatever?
Because it's the rate of reload. If you have to reload after shooting 10 rounds, I have time to escape from you if you're out to get me. If you have 30 rounds, it's just constant suppression. I can't move.
Well, okay. Are you watching the chat, by the way?
Yeah, I see Don from Two Plebs Talk News.
Yeah.
How you doing, Don? He's going to talk a lot.
Okay, well,
just ignore him.
Yeah, I just thought his thing about the Listeria ice cream was funny. Yeah, it is obviously easier to. Yeah, it is easier to suppress. I mean, it's twice as easy to suppress someone with a 30 round magazine than with a 15 round magazine. I mean, I'm no math genius, but that seems fairly obvious.
Yes. So then it comes back to
However-
that, you know, how safe do you want to be versus how free do you want to be thing.
Right. Now, obviously, there's no mention of magazines in the Second Amendment, but I think it goes to the same point as far as limiting an individual's effectiveness
Yeah.
and with regard to protecting.
Oh,
him or
you won't get
herself.
an argument from me on this one. I think the Heller decision made it pretty clear that even if you try to inconvenience the way somebody owns a gun, that you're infringing upon a Second Amendment right, which includes self-defense. So I think you can limit magazines, but you can't ban magazines.
Okay.
Maybe I should rephrase that before you attack me with that. I don't think you can ban magazines outright. You can limit their size. That's what I mean to say.
Okay, and I don't want to fall into the whole slippery slope fallacy, but do you worry that that one thing will sort of lead to another, that like we're taking like
No,
a
that's
baby steps progressive sort of approach?
Calling it a fallacy is funny. It is a slippery slope, but that's because the nature of violence changes over time. Like we have new tools that we didn't have before, so we can kill more people than we used to be able to do, right? Like our laws have to catch up with our society. Our laws have to catch up with our technology.
Well, I don't know. I've heard that argument applied to the Constitution. I've heard it applied to the Second Amendment from the left and collectivists in general, and I've heard it as a rebuttal applied to the First Amendment by individualists and other people on the right. And I'm sure you've seen both of those as well.
Probably.
Okay, obviously technology changes. However, I believe that the founding fathers, I don't think they were gods by any means, but they were men with a great deal of wisdom and foresight. And part of the reason is like they were businessmen. They weren't politicians, a lot of them, and they weren't all businessmen, of course. But
they were lawyers.
Some of them, yeah. And like Benjamin Franklin was a diplomat, so he obviously involved in politics, but they weren't politicians in the way that we think of them today. These guys weren't, career politicians who, well, do you see what I'm saying?
No, I don't. I'm trying to figure out how this relates to the technology changing and our laws catching up with it.
The way it relates is the founding fathers had the foresight to understand that technology does change. I mean, the people talk about the musket, the long rifle, as the height of technology at the time, the height of firearms technology. It actually wasn't. I mean, there were
jokes on them.
What do you mean?
I mean, clearly we figured out a better way to kill people.
Yes, yeah, but even at that time, there were weapons that had been developed. They weren't in circulation the same way that the musket was, obviously, but there were fully automatic weapons that had been developed, and the founders were fans of them. To think that the founders couldn't foresee that we would someday have, technological advancements that would lead to much better weapons and much better everything else is just kind of silly. So
I never made that claim.
No, I'm not saying you did. I'm just saying it's similar to that claim. Like the argument that you're making seems to me similar to that claim.
I take your point.
Okay, obviously technology does advance in many ways. We have the internet now. We have nuclear weapons. We have tanks and all kinds of other things.
Then that's the thing. The technology does change, and we have to figure out a way to adapt your rights and our laws in concert with them. You have a right to free speech, and you have a right to free speech on the internet, but that doesn't mean you have the right to threaten somebody over the internet. Like I don't have to be next to you physically. Huh?
I can threaten you on the internet all day long, and there's no law against it.
I don't know about that. I would advise you don't test that.
Well, okay, there are laws in the UK right now that make it that you can actually be punished for saying something bad. Like in Germany, they have laws against saying bad things about Jews, and that's obviously a knee-jerk reaction to things that
Yeah.
happened before. In the UK, you have, or in Great Britain, you have laws against terrorist speech and things like that.
Yeah.
That's not good. That's not a good kind of restriction on speech. You couldn't do that here
Okay.
because you would be infringing on people's First Amendment rights.
I think terroristic threats is in the penal code here. Like, I can't imagine any locale that doesn't have some sort of a crime against making terroristic threats against a person.
Okay, well, obviously that's different, but the law doesn't depend on the internet. It's not bound to the change in technology, is what I'm saying. Like your ability to yell fire.
That's what I was saying.
Say what?
I was saying that you repeated what I said.
Oh,
just in a different way. Yes,
okay.
you have a right of free speech regardless of the internet's existence, exists or doesn't exist. You even have a right to free speech on the internet, but we have long established laws on what those kinds of speech entail: print media, oral speech, whatever. And I can go to child pornography as an example of this. Pornography is a protected form of speech, but child pornography is not. Now, does that mean it's not in print media, or if it's stuck in time, it shouldn't matter whether it's on the internet or not, right? It has to adapt with the technology of the day.
Right. What I'm saying is the limitations on our rights that, like you mentioned, like yelling fire in a crowded theater. We can't do that. It's a limitation. It's not because of technology. It's not because of the word fire. It's because you're potentially harming people. And my rights don't allow me to harm anyone, which is why child pornography is not protected and pornography is, because child pornography hurts children and pornography hurts no one.
Okay.
Right. So it has nothing to do with the technology.
Hey, Don, shut the fuck up. He's gonna backseat debate. Okay, I'm gonna take your point. I mean, you're kind of saying what I'm saying. I don't think you understand. Like, I don't mean that as like an insult.
No,
we agree with each other. We already agree with each other.
Okay, well, good. Okay, I thought you were saying that we have to create new limitations on rights as technology advances. That seemed like that's what you were saying.
No, I think we have to adapt the same limitations we had before as technology advances.
Okay, well, where have we limited the number of bullets in the past?
Don't know.
I mean, before we had 30-round magazines.
I couldn't tell you. Where have we done it before we had 30-round magazines? We did it in 1994 with an assault weapon ban. We probably did it with the NFA, but I couldn't tell you specifically.
Well, no,
but I mean, it's got a basis. It's got a basis in history and in law. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't necessarily make it right or constitutionally.
Well, yeah, we're arguing for a different thing. If you're going to try to argue the ethics of it, we have to detach that from law. Laws don't reflect our ethics. Laws reflect utility.
Well, laws also reflect ethics and morality.
Well, I don't think they do, because your ethics and my ethics aren't the same thing.
No, but okay, like, let me explain. My theory about the law is essentially that we have three types of laws. Laws fall into one of three categories. We have laws.
Civil law, natural law, constitutional law.
No. What I mean is, and this is not like you're not going to find this in any kind of textbook. This is my own sort of thing. Okay, so just bear with me. We have laws based on morality, like don't kill, don't rape, don't steal from people. We have laws based on common sense and safety, like don't drive through a school zone at 200 miles per hour.
Okay.
And lastly, we have laws based on control. Now, according to my theory of liberty, it's a very libertarian theory. Okay. Basically, a person should be able to do whatever he or she wants to do as long as it doesn't adversely affect somebody else. So the laws against morality are clearly necessary and good. Laws against, infringing on someone else's safety are clearly, for the good.
Okay.
But the laws that fall into the category of control are not good. So that's
Okay.
basically, that's what my philosophy is based on, kind of as a whole.
So you're a strong believer in libertarian thought?
Yes, I don't call myself a libertarian necessarily, unless it's sort of like
No, just an
expedient.
individualist.
Yes, just thank you. Yeah, individualist.
Okay, I take your point. So we're going to argue the ethics then, aren't we?
I suppose. Now, I've heard you made the argument. I've heard you make the argument in other debates that. Now, forgive me because I'm sure I'm going to mischaracterize your argument, but essentially, you disagreed with the ability for a common person to own an AR-15, basically because of ethics. Like it's either immoral or unethical for a person to own a weapon of war. Is that right?
Yes, but I think that's a bit of a bastardization of what I believe. That's a very simple and quick way of summarizing my belief, but I can justify that.
Go ahead. Yeah.
My belief on ethics is grounded in utility. You do things that work, basically, and it tends to be positive utility. I see laws against things like public drunkenness. Like, you're not really harming anybody if you're publicly drunk, but you are harming me in the sense that you're an eyesore. So my sense of utility is based on social contract. I want certain things to be a certain way as a universal agreement for what makes us all better off. Now, as a universal agreement for what makes us all better off, you can have guns because you have a right to self-defense. We're all better off if we have a right to self-defense and an effective means of self-defense. But we're not all better off if we all have weapons of war that we can wage against each other.
I know you're going to disagree with me, but I don't necessarily think that we're all worse off if we all have weapons of war either.
I don't know. I would look at other countries to figure out how worse off we would be. And I mean, you couldn't look at a place like Syria or Somalia and determine that really they're fine because of all the guns they have. Like, they would be worse off if they didn't have those guns. It seems weird to me.
It seems irrelevant to me. I don't think you could say they're all better off because of all the guns they have. I don't think you could say they're all worse off because of all the guns they have. I mean, it is what it is. They have a lot of guns. I mean, Somalia
but
is a shithole for
these are war zones, though, is what I'm saying. They're shithole war zones. And, if they didn't have guns, they might still be shithole war zones, but they'd be a little bit less lethal as a shithole war zone.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Seems like a fallacious kind of an argument. Plus, the reason
maybe
that I often bring up the fact that America and American culture are very, very different from any other country or any other culture is because people make comparisons to gun laws in Australia and gun laws in the UK, and it's really not a good comparison.
I don't know. I mean, how different are we culturally from them? We are similarly grounded in security and liberal values. We are like them in a lot of ways, but the gun way, and that's why it's relevant, because it's in terms of stability, we can look at stable Western democracies that have a similar economy, similar everything up to the gun issue, and they have a lower rate of homicides than we do. So I don't see why we couldn't extrapolate some information from that.
Okay. Well, hang on. First of all, thank you, Lisa and Two Plebs, for participating. I really dig it. I mean, really, I appreciate it. And yeah, Don, I'm assuming that's Don from Two Plebs.
Yeah, that's Don.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. The reason that I have, and I hear what you're saying, and the reason that I have a problem with it is because people say, look at what they're doing over in Europe. Let's do that, and we'll have the same results. I don't think we will have the same results. I don't think it's even close.
Yeah, that's just why I wouldn't suggest we do what they do in Europe. But I will suggest that what they do in Europe works for them.
Oh yeah, it works for them. I mean, maybe. I mean, that's definitely arguable as far as how well it works, and I mean what you mean by works. Like,
Well, it works in the sense that they experience a lower rate of firearm homicides.
well, okay. If you compare, oh God, I hate this. If you do compare Great Britain and their like gun crimes or gun murders or whatever with America, you compare them now and you compare them prior to their banning of guns over in the UK. They always have had lower numbers before they banned guns and after. So that's what I mean by America is different. I mean, we have more guns, we have more gun crime, we have more gun murders.
You won't get a disagreement with me on that. This is the point I made to Sinatra Says, and I'm going to make the same point to you.
All right.
There are more factors in gun violence than just the availability of guns. It's an economic factor. It's a cultural factor. There's lots of different things that can inform gun violence. But the most immediate and apparent one is the availability of guns. That simply put, if you didn't have guns, there couldn't be gun violence.
Well, I mean, I think equally immediate and apparent is violence.
Yes. If we didn't have violence in general, that'd be great. But you know, what can you do about that? When you outlaw violence, all the good that does.
But there's also the argument, like it goes to, you know, if you ban guns, like, hey, why don't we make violence illegal? You know, it's kind of a silly road to go down because.
Which is why I want my laws grounded in utility, figuring out what works. Like you wouldn't argue that. Well, actually, you might, but I think most people would agree that speed limit. You brought this up as an example earlier. We should have speed limits because we have an interest in controlling certain people from doing certain things, even if even if there's nothing that really stops them from obeying a speed limit law. People still speed. We still have the laws anyway. It's a referendum on what we want people to do.
Yes, I agree.
So, I mean, that's more or less my philosophy from guns. Like outlawing violence we outlaw violence, but it's a little bit silly to think people are going to just comply with the law of violence. But that doesn't mean you repeal a law just because people aren't going to comply with it.
Okay. The problem as I see it is depending on government to try to fix these problems is the wrong way to go about it. Now, obviously, the assault weapons ban sunsetted, which is a good thing. But for the most part, when
cough,
I'm sorry,
cough.
Yeah, I know, right? In my opinion, it's a good thing. But for the most part, when government legislates to try to fix a problem, it doesn't go away. We have a lot of bad laws on the books that have been on the books for a long time, and I think if we're going to have full-time politicians whose job it is to legislate, I think half of their job should be rooting out bad laws and getting rid. Like I like what President Trump said: if you want to create new legislation, you have to get rid of old legislation.
Yeah, I find that funny. I think when it comes to not even that. Okay, this isn't anything about you. But when it comes to guns, we are very weirdly reactive based on the race of the shooter. We are reactive when it comes to other things in law. Like if we determine that pipes shouldn't be made from lead anymore because we figure out that lead's a little bit poisonous, so we start making people rip out their pipes and replace them. So there's a foundation for this. But when it comes to guns, when it comes to a Muslim person shooting his coworkers in San Bernardino, California, we have a solution and that can be found in law. We need a total and complete shutdown of all Muslims entering the United States. And when an illegal immigrant shoots a bullet from a gun he found and it goes into Kate Steinle, we need a wall, build the wall. But when it comes to a white person doing it, we have this weird reaction where it's like, well, I don't know that new laws are going to fix anything. Why is that?
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I think it's the same reaction. Like to your point, when someone screams Allahu Akbar and beheads one of their coworkers or shoots a bunch of their coworkers, we say this is a problem with the Muslim religion. And when an illegal immigrant murders if it was an accident, accidentally kills a young woman, we say we need to deal with the illegal immigration problem. And when a crazy white person storms into a school and shoots people, I think, people say we need to look at the mental health problem. So I think it's the same reaction.
We give the benefit of the doubt. Well, I mean, it's a similar reaction. You're right. I'm a little lost in the mental health argument because it feels like it's just a way to dodge the underlying issue, which is always the availability of guns. It's really easy to get a gun here. And even if you are mentally ill, there's no real way we can screen and predict your ability to be violent later. Like, not all mental illnesses are the same. And I wouldn't propose depriving people on their rights on just any mental illness whatsoever. That's a little too far for me.
On just what?
So on any mental illness. Like, if you're depressed, I'm not a fan of just taking away your right to keep and bear arms. It has to be reserved for a mentally ill person that might be violent and because of their mental illness. And that's not everybody who's mentally ill. So a lot of people are floating this idea that this guy's mentally ill, and he might be mentally ill. There's no way to screen for that. So I don't know what new laws are going to do anything when it comes to mental illness. But conceivably, if we had an assault weapon ban, and this guy did use an assault weapon, conceivably he would have had to find another method to carry out this massacre that might have been less lethal.
Or more lethal.
Or more, yeah. We're living in a land of hypotheticals.
Yes.
But what we do know is he used an AR-15 that used to be banned, and now it's not. And he killed 17 people.
Yes. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with the facts of the argument. I mean, yeah, it used to be banned and now it isn't. But, I mean, I don't think I think your point is invalid because let's say he had tried to accomplish this in like 1998 while the ban was still in effect, right?
Yeah.
He could have purchased an AR-15 that had been grandfathered in. You know, I mean, it's not like all AR-15s suddenly disappeared.
Oh, if my goal in the world is to end every bit of gun violence, my goal then should be to legislate every gun out of existence and confiscate all your guns. So, I mean, I take your point that it's not entirely effective to that end. But at the same time, I also don't think people are criminal masterminds and that generally they comply with the law. So if he's trying to buy an AR-15 and he doesn't know where to get one from, he's not going to go to Academy Sports and Outdoors to get one.
But he doesn't have to. Like, what was his name? The guy that stole guns from his mother, you know?
Oh, I mean, Adam Lanza, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I have a terrible memory for names, apparently. But my point is...
I don't even remember your name, man.
My
Eric,
point
right?
is,
yeah.
Yes, that's right. My point is that, and this is a point that collectivists often make, is that there is an extreme availability of guns in the United States.
Mm-hmm. There is.
Yeah, I mean, they are everywhere. So to say that banning the AR-15 would have, it seems like the argument you're making is banning the AR-15 would have prevented this massacre. Is that
no? I think
accurate?
It would have just changed the massacre. These things. I mean, if he wants to kill somebody, he's going to kill somebody, and these things are going to be measured in body counts. Now, if he had an AR-15, he used an AR-15, he killed 17 people. Hypothetically, if he had to use a pistol, and only had 10-round magazines in those pistols or something to that effect, conceivably there could be fewer dead. Just like similarly, conceivably there could be more dead. Seung-Hoo Cho from the Virginia Tech managed to kill more people, but what we do see consistently every time there is this mass shooting is this trend, and that is the AR-15 being the tool.
Well, I mean, it's not consistent.
I can name them like off the top of my head. It's pretty consistently. I don't know why you say that.
Because handguns are used in most mass shootings.
Okay, maybe then most high-profile mass shootings, it's the AR-15.
Okay, and that's fine. Like
the ones with the biggest casualties tend to be AR-15. Okay.
Are we still talking about banning high-capacity magazines, by the way?
I don't know. We got off on we scattered a bit.
Okay, let me just say this. When it comes to saving lives, the way I view it is this: people are going to die always.
Yes,
always. People have, it's just some of it is preventable and some of it is not, regardless. And it's an extremely, it's probably extremely callous to say this, but my argument is that, as sad as it is, high school kids dying doesn't trump people's rights, and I think when when we're reeling from a tragedy, that's probably the worst time to come up with new legislation.
Well, when is the time to come up with new legislation? How many high school kids have to die before we can decide that it's time for new legislation?
I mean, obviously, I can't put a number on it. I don't think there is a number. I don't think there are any number of people that whose suffering is worth doing away with our rights. And I know you're not talking about like completely repealing the Second Amendment. I mean, that's a completely different.
No, but I take your point. It's an infringement, and I think
Yes.
I wouldn't apply this standard. Like I go back to the fire in a crowded theater. We already accept this principle when it does come to your most sacred right, your right to speech, your right to express something, and we're okay with it. But guns is where we draw the line.
Obviously, we're okay with limiting rights. I mean, the idea of placing reasonable limitations on rights, obviously, as a society, we are okay with this.
We just
However,
disagree with what reasonable means.
yes, well, not just that, but I think it's something that we have to be so careful about, because once these limitations are in place, it's an extremely rare thing for that limitation to be removed or altered or reversed.
Yeah, it's difficult to get rid of laws. I understand that.
Yeah.
I think we take steps in the wrong direction though, because it is difficult to get rid of laws. We have things like President Trump, like signing into law this thing that stops the Social Security Administration from contributing to the NICS background check system.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm giving you an example of where we're not taking action and it hurts us, specifically expanding background checks. Like this isn't something that should be really restrictive of your rights. That's not, I mean, except maybe your right of privacy, but even then, I'm not sure. But as an example, earlier, about a year ago, Congress sent to President Trump something that is would have expanded the NICS background check system, and Trump signed it into law.
Okay.
It is difficult
I'm
to
not
get rid of.
familiar with that. Like, how did it expand it?
Oh, it allowed different federal. It allowed the FBI background check system to pull from different sources than just the FBI. Like it could pull from Social Security Administration, for example.
Okay. All right. The reason that like we already talked about this at the very beginning of this discussion, like the reasons that we're in favor of background checks.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't know. I guess I go back to my earlier point. I think we have to be extremely careful about placing any limitations on our rights.
Oh, we do. We definitely do. I'm not disagreeing there.
Yeah, but
I do think we need to react.
Right, and the idea, which I don't think that you've espoused this notion, but other people on your side have, which is basically the idea of we have a problem and everybody's terrified of this problem, so let's go ahead and legislate things until we find something that works, is just the worst way to go about it. And obviously that's not what we're doing currently, but that's what some people are trying to do. Like Dianne Feinstein.
Yeah. Well, what makes this issue is you can't even get people to necessarily agree that we have a problem. I would hope you would at least admit gun violence is a problem.
Well, okay. See, now that's kind of a tough one. Like, obviously, you couldn't say that, kids dying in schools is not a problem. Obviously, that is a problem. But I guess it comes down to what is the problem? Like, what is the problem and which problems can we actually solve?
One of the problems with kids dying in school is that people who want to kill those kids have a way of getting guns rather easily. So one problem is the availability of guns, or if you accept that as a problem. So we know how they do it. Another problem is, well, there's a mental health care system that maybe it's not up to task of dealing with certain people. We need a better medical infrastructure. There's a fair bit of problems to this. Some of it's economics. Not every shooter is the rich asshole like Stephen Paddock. Sometimes it's just some kid who doesn't really have anything better to do, and he's crazy and he's a punk and he's been raised in gang culture. Speaking of that, it's also a bit of a cultural problem. We like guns. we worship them. It's a fun thing to shoot. So I don't know.
Well, honestly, I think there are more people on your side that fetishize guns than on my side.
I don't know about that.
Well, they do. They don't admire. They don't. They're not obviously in favor of them, but they do.
It's not really a fetishization, then, is it?
Well, they do hold them. Well, maybe not. Maybe fetishize is the wrong word, but
They don't stop talking about them. I understand your point.
not just don't stop talking about them. They view them outside of common sense. Like
Yes.
like before I joined the military, I didn't have a whole lot of experience with guns. I wasn't like raised around guns, and I had never gone hunting or anything like that.
Should do that. It's fun.
Yeah. So when on the rare occasion when there was a gun in my presence, it was deeply concerning to me. It was disconcerting. There's just sort of
because you weren't in that culture.
I'm sorry?
Because you weren't in that culture. You weren't familiar with it.
Exactly. I was unfamiliar with it. It was just this sort of idea, like it's just this inherently dangerous object that can just sort of go off at any time, and nobody in the room is safe while this thing is in the room. What solved that for me, obviously, was gaining familiarity with firearms. So what I want to avoid is people who legislate from a position of ignorance. Not just ignorance about firearms in general, but ignorance about the Constitution and things like that. Which, unfortunately,
I am with you there, brother.
Right. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in government that have this weakness.
Okay, so if your assertion is, I'm sorry, no, not if this was your assertion is the problem is ignorant people arguing about an issue they know nothing about.
Not just
essentially
that.
the Dunning. What? Not just that. What did I miss?
No. I mean, I was. This is embarrassing. I was actually angling toward a different point earlier, and I kind of got off on that one. I don't remember what the earlier one was. So yeah, I guess we'll go ahead.
If you refined it, just interrupt me and let me know, because now I'm going to respond to what you actually said.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
The issue is stupid people. You're not going to find a disagreement from me.
Right.
Liberals are terrible when it comes to talking about gun control. You remember that USA Today tweet about like possible gun modifications, and it was the chainsaw as an underslung mount, like that.
Yeah, and all the memes that followed, like
great meme territory. Yeah, that's my favorite one.
Yeah.
So there are undoubtedly stupid people on this debate, but you talked about common sense solutions to these as a problem. I believe in common sense solution. I don't think being armed everywhere is necessarily a common sense solution. I see that as a contributing factor to the problem, which is that too many people in a very hot-headed, crazy, stupid country have guns.
Well, okay, hang on. I would have to take issue with a hot-headed, stupid country.
Okay.
I mean, do you really think the majority of people can be characterized that way?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I am sorry, but I think this isn't a uniquely conservative or liberal problem or anything like that, or collectivist or individualist, if you want to go to that. I think people are in general are just stupid people. They have no interest in learning about things. They are perfectly content to be outrage police every time there's something that catches their attention, but they won't do the due diligence to find something out about it.
Well, yeah, I suppose I wouldn't really disagree with that. I think that, okay, and I'm not saying that this is your assertion. I don't think that American people are stupid or hot-headed as a rule, just in general. I think when you get a group of people together and they start just like thinking as a group, that's sort of like the herd mentality, then yes, then in that instance, people can be stupid and hot-headed. However, individually, people are not stupid or hot-headed. However, I think that also individually, most people have just checked out. For whatever reason, we've just sort of handed it over to an untrustworthy government to deal with things for us.
Well,
And you
but
can see
they're
it in the
kind
fact
of the Well, this. Okay, I'm about to go on a rant for you, buddy.
go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
People who use the word lobbyist as like a buzzword of things we're supposed to be against bother me, because a lobbyist does what lobbyists do. They lobby for an issue. They are supposed to be the experts on the issue, and they're supposed to lobby for that issue. They have a position and they want to advocate for it. The average person doesn't have the time. They're stupid. It's not their fault. Like, I mean, it is their fault, but you can only consume so much information in a day, and not everybody has the kind of time or inclination to do these things. So saying the government's untrustworthy, I don't know. I mean, these are the people who we're supposed to trust for this. These are the people, because I can't certainly legislate on this as an issue. I'm not qualified. I've never studied law. I'm no expert on the issues. I want somebody who's going to sit on a panel with other people who have different ideas from them and listen to experts talk about it. Listen to lobbyists tell them what their ideas are, and then evaluate the information they're given and write laws based on those ideas, or do nothing based on those ideas.
Well, I think lobbyists. I would love to discuss lobbyists with you, but I think it's a broader discussion for a different time. But
Oh yeah,
just basically, I don't think we should have lobbyists. Period. However,
oh hang on. That's very unconstitutional.
is it? Go ahead.
Is it? Yeah. You mentioned earlier the First Amendment gives you a right to petition your government. What do you think lobbyists
Yes.
do?
No, I think that the American people obviously do and should have the right to petition the government. But I think that's kind of wishful thinking to say that's all lobbyists do. They're just acting on their First Amendment rights and petitioning the government. Obviously, they lobbyists work for. Here we go. We're getting into it.
Well, you want to step out of that? Well, just
Yeah.
take it off the table, because
Yeah, if you don't
That's
mind,
gonna
we
be
can just table that for a different time.
yeah. All right. So what have you to say with what I said?
Right. Okay. Obviously, we do. We vote. We vote for our leadership, our government leadership, and we have expectations of them. Because obviously, every single person in the United States cannot be in Washington D.C. at the same time. Okay. Now we do have to trust these people to a certain extent, which is why they campaign and why we
Yes.
supposedly are interested in their views on things and their past record, what they voted for and what they've voted against and things like that. However, it's like Reagan said, trust but verify. We cannot just have
absolutely
faith in these people,
absolutely,
which is, a lot of times is what we're doing. Like if when it came to the Affordable Care Act, whenever or the I just lost it again. The tax bill. Okay. I'm not against the tax bill, but I'm against the way that it was passed, just like the Affordable Care Act. Whenever things happen behind closed doors, that's not a good thing, regardless of the result.
Yep.
Which is one of the reasons that one of the things that I hold against collectivists is most collectivists have this idea of it doesn't matter what you do as long as the end result is good, and that's only
the ends justify the means.
Exactly, and that's only.
Hey, don't hate on us, brother.
So what?
So don't hate on us, brother.
No, it's just that's one of the things that I've heard from a lot of collectivists. Like that's their thing. The ends justify the means. Well, I'm sorry, but they don't.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten a little bit off topic. We're talking about common sense gun control reforms. What is your idea of a common sense gun control? Like, is the answer really to arm teachers? I mean, do I want to give Mr. Henry, who regularly throws his coffee and hates the class and has to constantly buy new supplies and he's angry at the school, a Glock?
Well, I mean, you can bring up the example of Mr. Henry, or you can bring up the example of the police officer that stuffed some poor girl in the trunk of his squad car and took her out to the woods and tied her up to a tree. Do we really want to give cops guns? I mean, you see where I'm going with that?
Well, we do, because I think the majority of cops are trained and tasked with a very certain and specific duty. Teachers are not to be protectors. Like, teachers are protectors out of necessity. Their primary function is to be educators. So if your argument is, let's put more cops in schools to keep schools safe, yeah, domino, let's do it. Perfect. But people seem to be arguing that teachers should be armed, and I'm not so sure I'm with them on that. Like, does that really strike you as common sense?
Actually, and I'm glad you brought that up. I saw that Lisa had brought that up in the chat, and I was going to get to that if I can ever get my train of thought back on the rails. I think
Israel?
I'm sorry.
What is the thought?
No. Lisa had brought up the arming teachers or having armed
Oh,
people
yeah.
in schools. I think the best suggestion that I've seen is to get veterans in schools. There are a lot of unemployed veterans, and these are people who are trained in the use and
Yeah.
the use and function and maintenance and everything else having to do with firearms. Even veterans who did not have a combat job were trained with firearms. So I think it's a great idea, and I would do it on a volunteer basis. I think that would be.
I think if you do it on a volunteer basis, you're never going to have anybody show up. I mean, you might have the odd one out, but I bring up utility as a means of like approaching problems. You want to hire veterans to be school security? That's fine. Now we arrive at the problem of how do you pay for this? And this is a point I've seen brought up, like about arming teachers. It's like we won't even pay them a decent enough salary to live on. They have to bring supplies from home. We are such fickle people when it comes to teachers. Like, why is this really the solution?
Well, I don't think we should make it a government solution at all. Why not let the free market decide?
Okay. The free market decide what?
Decide what teachers are paid and decide what if we want to put armed people in schools, let's you and me get together and start a company to seriously to arm and train people and put them in schools. And I'll bet
we have these companies. They're private security companies. The issue is paying for private security companies. Schools are funded off of taxpayer dollars, property taxes, and people really don't like their property taxes going up. So, I mean, if they're not going to pay the teachers, what makes you think they're going to pay the security guards?
Well, I agree. And security, believe me, I used to work in private security, and
so did I.
It's okay. Yeah, it's a complete dead end. I don't know why anyone would ever start a security company. It's just a complete dead end. So I agree with you.
PSA, everybody, don't ever work security.
No. Yeah, it's horrible. Really, the only way that you can make it lucrative is to be like a bodyguard for somebody famous or whatever. But again, I digress. No, I think that what I mean when I say let the free market decide is I like what John Stuart Mill said. He said that there should be a mandate for children to be educated, but government should never be involved in education.
Okay.
So there should be like government should be able to mandate that kids go to school, they get an education. But other than that, government should not be involved in education. Obviously, nowadays we see the reason why. And I don't know.
It's a little bit outside the topic. But,
no, I know. But what I'm getting at, and obviously teacher pay is also outside the topic, but what I'm getting at is I think for the same reason that you want to create legislation to attempt to prevent further school shootings, I think for that same reason, people would willingly pay to prevent school shootings. We don't have to. I don't think we have to create new laws. I think we can find a way to protect children without limiting the availability of certain guns.
I think you give way too much credit to the average person.
I don't think so. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm naive, but I believe in people, And
that's good.
I am an optimist.
That just means they haven't let you down enough.
No, I mean, I've been let down plenty, but I've also seen plenty good, I take your point. I've seen people do amazing, remarkably heroic and, and sacrifice in remarkable ways.
So
I'm not too.
So I want to get clear on this. Are you for or against arming teachers?
I'm for it. I'm not saying just a blanket policy like we should just arm all teachers, just make it part of, when they get an education degree, they get a gun to go with it. That's not what I'm saying.
And what if the parents of the students decide they don't want their students going to school where a bunch of teachers are armed?
Well, of course, that's their choice. Just like if a parent says, you know, I think my kid's getting a shitty education, I want to put him in a different school, that's their choice. I mean, I think
To
each
some
individual
degree.
school, I think in each
Well,
individual school should be able to choose
if you,
whether they have
yeah,
armed teachers
there
and
you go.
whatnot. That way, yeah. So if
That's where I was
parents,
trying to lead you.
okay, yeah. So if parents have the ability, which they should, they don't necessarily have it now, but they should have the ability to choose which school their kids go to, and that would obviously um, have that same effect. Like if you know if they don't want their kids in a school with a gun, then they should be able to make that choice as well.
Yeah. And what if the school doesn't want teachers armed?
But yeah, the same thing. Yeah, I mean it's up to the school.
Okay,
If a school,
that's a good answer.
yeah, if a school wants to pay their teachers more or pay their teachers less, that's up to the school. Just yeah, the same. It goes along the same lines, the same philosophical lines.
Okay, so figuring out the line for gun control. Uh, the answer to our problem is armed teachers, but I don't assume it's arm them with AR-15s. I'm kind of the philosophy, let the school decide. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea, but schools have different problems. You know, not every school's the same. So I don't know.
Yeah.
You got anything you want to contribute? Any other
Well,
ideas?
I would say why not AR-15s?
Because I really want to minimize the amount of students who get shots from the odd teacher.
I don't see kids getting shot from the odd teacher. I mean, think about it. If
Put an AR-15 in their hand, you will.
no, I don't think so. Look, if you have a student who brings a gun to school and shoots people, how many school shootings have been committed by teachers?
I couldn't tell you.
None. How often has a teacher brought a gun to school and be like, "Ah, oh, fuck these kids," and I'm just going to shoot them all? It's never happened.
Yeah.
At least never happened in this country. I don't know. There may be a case in some other country. So
Like
if
anything
teachers
else, just
aren't-
give it time.
what I'm saying is, and I'm not saying teachers are immune or it's impossible for a teacher to do this. What I'm saying is, as we have seen, teachers are not bringing guns into the classroom with the intent to do wrong. So there's no reason to assume that teachers would do harm to their students if there were a gun already present.
Okay, well, if that's the case, why not just go ahead and let them bring grenades in too?
Well, grenades are illegal.
Okay, well, let's repeal laws on grenades.
Hey, so be it. I'd love to.
Okay. I think you lost the utility point on this, right? There's. I mean, do you have any other ideas? Any other things you might want to contribute to keeping our schools safe? Or
No, I think it's the same. It's the same reason that I carry a handgun when I go out. And you
defense of yourself?
Yes, to defend myself. It's not that. What I was going to say is the same reason is because I want to be prepared to accept the responsibility of defending myself and others if the need should arise.
Yes. Hey, if the world were full of nothing but good guys with a gun, I'd take it. I just don't think everybody is a good guy with a gun, and I don't know that I should trust you to be a good guy with a gun. I'd rather have cops to that end.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's, and I don't have any numbers in front of me, but I think it's statistically more probable that the average American citizen is going to be trustworthy rather than a police officer. I mean,
Maybe. Yeah, probably.
So I think I don't know. And again, it could be naivete, but I don't know. I don't have a general mistrust of people, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit like the law-abiding citizen conundrum. Like people will say, it's never these law-abiding citizens committing these gun crimes, but it's circular logic. When you commit a gun crime, you're not a law-abiding citizen anymore. So you have people like this shooter, this Cruz guy, who were law-abiding citizens up to the day they killed somebody. I want to stop it from ever getting to that point.
I mean, I see what you're saying, and I've heard you make that argument before. But actually, Nicholas Cruz wasn't a law-abiding citizen up to the point when he entered school and killed 17 people.
He wasn't criminal enough that he couldn't get a gun.
No, I mean he wasn't a convicted felon, but he had a long history of disturbing behavior with weapons.
Yes.
Right. So there were obviously, it's not like he was just like regular, John Q. Public, law abiding citizen, just normal guy up until the point when he
Well,
entered a school. And
this is an excellent point. You've got this guy who has this bizarre behavior, and all these red flags are popping up. When is it a good idea to start infringing upon his rights? I mean, do you want to be reactive? Should we just wait until he kills a bunch of people, or should we be proactive and say, hey, you're posting a lot of shit online that is a little bit cause for concern. You're saying you're going to shoot up a school. When can we infringe upon them?
Right. I think when it comes to infringing on people's rights, it has to be reactive, always.
Okay. So then in the case of Nicholas Cruz, we just wait until he shoots people?
I'm sorry, in the case of Nicholas Cruz, what people?
We just wait until he shoots people?
Well, in his case, I don't have the whole thing out in front of me, but in his case, he should have had. Hang on.
he had never done anything that should have warranted a pop, like a red flag in the NICS system. Like, he had never been convicted of a crime. He was very bizarre, probably mentally ill, posting some very hateful things online that should have raised red flags. But if we're reactive, it doesn't matter. That none of this matters until he's convicted of a crime. So, I mean, you could skirt this whole, we should generally trust people. Like, yeah, we should. I mean, that's the system at work, is we're trusting Nicholas Cruz, even though it's clear we shouldn't.
Well, I guess to answer your question, yes, because of due process, we just wait until he goes in and commits a crime that, as a society, we deem worthy of taking away his or limiting his right to own a gun. Yes.
All that hogwash liberal bullshit. I say we go Minority Report style, cameras in the house, take every gun you have, and all that shit. But I will accept this, that as a rule, there's no way you could stop every shooting. I'm totally with you there. I'm not even sure what the solution is to stopping the next Nicholas Cruz. I don't know how you stop somebody who's clearly too crazy for a gun, but not crazy enough that we can't sell it to him. It's this weird gray area, and I don't know that there is a solution, but I see it as a problem.
Yeah, we like a little crazy, not too crazy.
Yeah, take the crazy in doses. This guy. I mean, if you were asking me to be his lawyer, I'd say, you know what, the gun. He hasn't done anything that should warrant his rights being taken away. He's clearly a law-abiding citizen. All those jokes, those are harmless jokes. He's just shit posting. He's got a right to free speech, and this is his sense of humor. And he hasn't been convicted of a crime. He hasn't been institutionalized, so give him the gun. But on the other side, then he kills 17 people, and now it's like, well, we should have known better.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, of course, Nicholas Cruz did and said things where a lot of people are saying, you know what, we should have known better. There were indicators here. Somebody should have said something, and in fact, somebody did. And I've seen a lot of people now saying, well, the FBI dropped the ball on that one. They really should have acted.
Well,
but
I really don't think they did.
See, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think that it seems like, now, I don't have all of the information, but it seems like the FBI acted within the parameters of their authority. And, they did what they could do. However,
I mean, they got the tip and they followed up on it, and then they determined there's really nothing there. I mean, what can you do if that's the case?
Yeah, but it could very well be that the people that followed up on it could have done a better job. It could have been more thorough. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's nothing legislation is going to fix. Legislation can't fix the human condition. People are stupid. People are lazy. There's nothing, no amount of law is going to stop that.
I completely agree, which is what differentiates you from most people on your side of the argument. Most people on your side of the argument inherently believe that you can legislate against human nature, or not against. You can legislate to fix the flaws in human nature. Like you said, how do we prevent the next Nicholas Cruz? We can't really.
Yeah. Or we could eradicate liberalism.
No, we can't.
Clearly, the white supremacist arguing against the Jews was a liberal, flaming liberal.
Are liberals typically anti-Jewish?
I don't know. I'm not, so I couldn't tell you. But I will say, just on observation, most anti-Jews I've noticed have been very not liberal. They've been big alt-right kind of conservative types.
Yeah. It's funny actually. I know very little about the alt-right. I haven't looked into it.
Avoid.
I-
Avoid.
Yeah, I've really the only times that I've heard alt-right is when it comes to people who are not alt-right, like Milo Yiannopoulos or Ben Shapiro or any of the other like political speakers that people accuse of being alt-right.
Well, Ben Shapiro, fine, but Milo Yiannopoulos called himself alt-right. He wrote a love primer about it was called "The Establishment Conservative's Guide to the Alt-Right" in Breitbart. He seemed to go out of his way to wear that badge. So I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, and in all honesty, I have not heard that and I have not read that. What I have heard him say is multiple times that he's not alt-right. So yeah,
probably because they disavowed him because
uh,
he's a gay Jew. I mean, it's a little bit like the Tara McCarthy problem, or not Tara McCarthy. I guess it's Tara McCarthy, the woman who. I mean, you're not familiar with. There's this alt-right woman who basically put her tweets in like protected mode because she said the alt-right has a serious woman problem that they need to they're alienating their female support, and it's like, yeah, you don't. Why are you friends with these guys? Like, it should be clear they're against you. Okay. Have you ever watched the Chappelle Show?
say what?
Have you ever seen the Chappelle Show when it was on?
Yeah, back in the day.
You remember the episode with Clayton Bigsby, the black white supremacist?
I don't remember a show with Clayton Bigsby. No.
Okay. Well, it was a skit on the Chappelle Show where there's a black white supremacist. He didn't know he was black because he was blind. It's just that in concept. Every time there's a Tara McCarthy of the world or a Milo Yiannopoulos of the world, it's like you're against people who are clearly against you. Like, why do you carry these ideas? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't know. But on the other hand,
But they're individualists. That's why.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with being an individualist. No, the thing is, like, the reason that I wouldn't kind of go down that road is because I think it's very condescending to say, "Hey, you're voting against your own self-interest," and to make that kind of argument. Like, I think most people know what their own self-interests are, even if it seems from an outside perspective like they're contradicting that.
Well, maybe I should. It would be better to say the self-interest. I'm sorry. I guess it's not self-interest. Maybe we should say collective interests. Which, if you're an individualist, that doesn't really matter. But if you're a collective, it does. The problem is the alt-right are going to view people like Milo with his collective identity, even if Milo doesn't necessarily view himself like that.
Right.
So I mean, he'll wear the alt-right badge, but they'll say he's a Jew.
Right. And who cares? I mean, you can call yourself a Nazi if you want to, but it's really your actions that are going to tell me and everyone else who you are. So if Milo Yiannopoulos says that he's alt-right, but then, doesn't act on any of the principles that the alt-right claims to hold.
I don't know what act on the principles does, but he espouses their talking points pretty regularly.
Okay,
he'll pussyfoot around saying he's a white supremacist. This is something he'll say he's something like a Western supremacist, but he's very clearly, I mean, consistently, he's got people like Baked Alaska, touring with him. It's clear where his position is. Although this isn't really attached to guns. So if you want to get off this, or you want to keep talking about Milo, because I can go on for hours about how much I hate that guy.
Honestly, I don't care. I'm enjoying the conversation. So
it might have to be something we do again.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Yeah.
In fact,
this was fun.
Yeah, if you want, we can call
what's that?
it.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, not really. Just I appreciate the opportunity to do this, and like I said, this is the first time I've done a live stream, so kind of wetting my toes.
Yeah, and you started it by going to like the little boys' room and something. Like you weren't even here for like the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, dead air is a good thing for a live stream, right? That's what you want?
Oh, no, I was talking to nobody to fill the void.
Right.
I got you, buddy.
I appreciate that. But no, that's all I wanted to say is I appreciate, you like doing this live hangout with me, and I look forward to the next time.
Yeah. I sway you in anything? You've been convinced?
Well, I wouldn't say that you've changed my mind on anything, but I don't know. I guess I'll have to give it some thought. You know, kind of like just think about the whole thing. And probably like watch the video and I'll let you know.
All right. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on. This is fun. This is probably going to be like the last time I actually go out of my way to talk about gun control, because honestly, like 4 times is enough for me.
Yeah.
So we'll have to do a new topic next time. But yeah, this was fun.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks, man. And have a good one.
Yeah. Yes, sir. You too.
All right, bye. Okay, well, thanks everybody who was in the chat for stopping by, and I'll be posting a new video on Friday. So, anyway, thanks. I mean, I really appreciate the support. Okay, bye.